Hello, my name is Giulia Felappi and I'm a lecturer in philosophy at the University of Southampton. In this video, I would like to discuss with you two questions that concern mathematical objects and in particular numbers. And the two questions are first, what are numbers? And second, and relatedly, how can we ever have access to the truth of mathematics and the numbers? Now we have quite a good understanding of numbers and we know quite a number of things about them. For example, you know that if you pay with a £10 note and the good you're buying is £5, you're entitled to a £5 back. You might not have thought about this before, but if I ask you what the successor of 232 is, you know that it is 233. Now, among the things that we know about numbers are two intuitions that we seem to all have about the nature of numbers. So, first, we think that the truths of mathematics are objective. So, mathematics is beyond us. It is not down to us how much 2 plus 2 is. It is not down to us what is the successor of 232. Second intuition, we have an intuition that we have a kind of intimacy with mathematical objects. We know quite a number of things about them, and we are able to use mathematics and to exploit mathematics to understand and measure reality. Now, these two intuitions seem to be completely unproblematic, but if you think about it, and if you think about them together, you realize that there is some tension between these two intuitions. And the best way to see where the tension comes from is to ask ourselves a question. And the question I would like you to consider is, where are numbers to be found? Now, there are fundamentally three options here. First, numbers are in the world around us. Second, numbers are here in the mind. Third, numbers are up there, detached from us. So as we will see now, each of these options is able to account for one of our intuitions, but has trouble with the other one. So let's consider the first option. The first option is the one according to which numbers are in the world around us. Now, of course, numbers are not around us in the same way in which your friends are around you or the table that you are seeing right now is around you. We cannot smell the number 2. We cannot bump into the number 2. According to this option, numbers are not like trees or like tables or like yourself, but they are properties of objects. So me and you together, we have the property of being the number 2. You and 2 of your friends, when taken together, you have the property of being 3. The most famous defender of this view about where numbers are is Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. And Aristotle was both a great philosopher and a great scientist. He was, for example, the author of the first ever book in biology. And Aristotle thought that the only way to account for the nature of numbers was to see numbers as properties of things when taken together. Aristotle has been very famous for defending the view. Equally famous is how strongly Bertrand Russell criticized the view. Bertrand Russell is another extremely famous philosopher and mathematician, and Russell criticized the view exactly because he thought that you would then lose the objectivity of mathematics. So what was Russell's idea? Well, suppose that I'm thinking of you. I can think about you as one human being. If I think about you as one human being, then the property you have is that you are one human being. But I can also think of you as a collection of all the cells that compose you. And then if I think about you as all your cells, then you're not one, but you are something around 37 trillion cells. So Russell thought, well, it depends on how people think about reality, what properties objects have. It depends on how I think about you, whether you are 1 or you are 37 trillion. And then we are losing out on the objectivity of mathematics because numbers that are properties of objects depend on how we think about this object and how we group them together. So, according to this first option, we are good on intimacy. Of course, if numbers are properties of objects, then you can know them exactly as you can know your friends, and you can know the table, and you can know a tree, and you can know the reality around you. But we are in trouble with objectivity. It seems that the way in which we think about reality changes what numbers are there. So, in this sense, numbers are down to us, they are not beyond us, we are losing objectivity. So, then we have a second option. The second option is that numbers are not in the reality around us, but they are all here in our minds. And this view might come as quite natural at first, but in philosophy of mathematics, it has been strongly opposed by a number of authors. And the strongest opposer of this second option was Gottlob Frege, a great logician, mathematician, and philosopher. And Frege has a lot of arguments against this second option that numbers are just here. And here is a way for you to see what Frege was after. So if we created the numbers, then of course, before human beings were not around, then there would be no truth that involved numbers. So go back a long time when human beings were not there, then it would not have been true then that there were, for example, 3 dinosaurs in the lake. Because, of course, in order for something like that to be true, you would need first to have human beings to create the numbers. But, of course, it is true, it was true then, that there were 3 dinosaurs. This is an objective truth, set in stone, and it cannot depend on us being or not being around. So also the second option, Frege says, might be good on intimacy, but is definitely in trouble with objectivity. It depends on us. Mathematics and the truth of mathematics are not beyond us. In fact, also when it comes to intimacy, there might be, in fact, issues because we have a very powerful mind, but still we are finite beings. So it is not clear how we could ever create something infinite like the mathematical objects. In particular, if you consider that natural numbers, for example, are infinite, but there are mathematical objects that are much, much bigger than that infinity. So surely this view has problems with objectivity, but it might even have problems with intimacy. That leads us to our third option. According to it, numbers are neither around us, like your friends are, nor in the mind, but they are in fact detached from us. They are up there in what philosophers call a Platonic heaven. So why is it called a Platonic heaven? Well, because that goes after Plato, the greatest philosopher, arguably, in the Western tradition, so much so that the British philosopher Whitehead said that all the history of Western philosophy is nothing but a footnote to Plato. And Plato was not just a great philosopher, but he also thought that mathematics was fundamental to be a good philosopher. And in fact, on the main door of his academy, you would not read "only enter if you care about philosophy," you would read "only enter if you know geometry." And Plato thought that numbers should be detached from us and should be in another universe, in a heaven, where you can find, for example, the form of the good, the form of beauty, and Plato thought also numbers. Now, this view was defended then by many, many authors. For example, it was defended by the great mathematician Gödel, who you might know about. Gödel is famous, for example, for having proved that time travel is mathematically conceivable. And when it came to the nature of numbers, Gödel thought that Platonism was obviously the way to go. Now, Platonism is, of course, in a very good position when it comes to our intuition about objectivity. If the numbers are out there, up there, together with the form of the good and the form of the beauty, then they don't depend on us. We cannot deteriorate them and make them subjective. They are there objectively with all their properties, and all the truths about mathematics are up there. But of course, we now have a problem with intimacy. If numbers are so detached from us and they are up there, then how can we ever have access to them? This, in philosophy of mathematics, is called the Benacerraf access problem. And Benacerraf says, well, if numbers are detached, they are not in the world around us, and we didn't create them, but they are up there in a Platonic heaven, then how can we ever grasp them? How can we ever have access to them? So this third view is able to account for our intuition that there is objectivity in the truth of mathematics, but has indeed problem with intimacy. How can we ever know anything about mathematics if the objects of mathematics are so far away from us? So then we are in a dilemma. So what is the dilemma? Well, it seems that we can indeed account for our intuitions, that mathematics is objective, and that there is some intimacy with mathematical objects. But we seem unable to account for both intuitions at once. Either we account for intimacy or we account for objectivity, but we seem unable to account for them both. Still, the two intuitions seems absolutely right, and it seems that neither is negotiable. So we have a problem. We need to find numbers in a place where we can then account for both objectivity and intimacy. In my research, I try to depopulate the Platonic heaven. I don't like the idea that there are things that are completely detached from our mind and from the world around us. But of course, that means that I have problems accounting for the intuition that truth about mathematics are objective. So here is our dilemma. It is an open problem in philosophy of mathematics, and is indeed a challenging question.